I'm so pleased to introduce the short background film you're about to see on privately owned public spaces, or as we call them, POPs. Huge produced and created this video pro bono, interviewing stakeholders and visiting sites to help contextualize these untapped resources in our city. POPs can play a vital role in making our city more livable, and MAS is excited to be revisiting the potential of POPs with Harvard professor Jerold Kayden. But I'll let Jerold tell you more about the importance of POPs to our city and our joint venture, Exploring POPs. But first, the film.
Much like the majority of people in the city, I had no idea that these spaces even existed.
I've been here over a year and I just noticed it.
Guys I usually come around or hang out here with, we call it the secret garden.
I don't even think most people that I work with know that it's this nice up here.
The POPs are a hidden jewel. I don't think we really thought about them. We never looked at it in the bigger picture.
Everybody realized that these spaces, and at that time in 2000 there were 503 privately owned public spaces, presented an incredible opportunity. A disaggregated central park, 82 acres of space, and if they could be activated by users, they would be great assets for the city.
Who do you think owns the space or is responsible for it?
I wouldn't know.
I don't know. I really never considered that.
In 1961, through a zoning invention called incentive zoning, offered to developers of private office towers and residential towers the ability to build larger, as long as they agreed to provide plazas and arcades that would be open and accessible and usable by the public. That was the start, the birth of privately owned public space.
The original purpose of POPs was really to create a meaningful and valuable open space in some of the really densest parts of the city. And I think in some cases it's been wildly successful. In other cases I think you've had a very mixed history.
People don't know that they can make use of these spaces, and so they don't. So a lot of them are underutilized.
What I was really trying to get at is how we can take a digital solution and apply that to a real world space and come up with ways to fix these problems that people are having.
We identified 4 main stakeholder groups, which were the city, the building owners, the general public, and advocates. We went and spoke to all of those people to try and get a handle on what issues they face and their vision for what they think POPs could be in the future.
In the city, very often there's a disconnect between agencies of the city and the public, and there's no connection. People have lost touch with how to get things done.
We have a high elderly population here. Then we have what I call the little people, and the strollers. And so they can't access some of the parks because they're up a flight of stairs.
The open space for us is precious.
Property owners don't really have a great understanding, and that's because they haven't done the research, because the information hasn't been presented to them clearly enough.
Most importantly is where to get information. Someone to help us along, what we can do, what we can't do, what city agencies we have to deal with. It's great for an office worker to take their lunch and go down and eat in a nice, quiet, maybe green space, get out of the office for a while. So I think they're very important in the crazy city that we live in here.
One of the biggest hurdles that the different stakeholders face is the lack of formal communication between the different stakeholder groups. What we hope is that the different solutions that we've come up with have a cumulative impact which actually helps to improve the communication between the different stakeholder groups.
There's a lot that's been learned over the 40 or so years that New York has been creating POPs. And it would be great for that knowledge to be able to be shared to other building owners that may wish to improve their space but don't have access to resources and would have to source them all on their own.
One of the big strengths of digital is being able to help people connect to each other and help people connect to information. There's a lack of awareness about what these spaces are, where they are, that they even exist. We can use digital to create a unified system that will let people know that, oh, this space that I'm looking at on my map is part of this POP system, and we can use it to let the people who are using them communicate back by giving them a means to report a problem, to comment about something, and give it a thumbs up if it's a really great space.
Do you tell a lot of people about it?
No. But I will.
I can't find anything negative about it. I really enjoy it.
There's a missed opportunity here to really have these amazing spaces near where you live and work that actually can improve your quality of life.
If we don't utilize what we have in the city, then it is our loss.
This can be an incredible asset for society as a whole. It can make the city bigger, wider, more exciting. And somebody has to come in and do that, whether it's an individual or an organization or the city or the owners, or in fact what I actually think needs to happen, which is everybody working together. So it's always been my great dream to appear after a film that has me as the last image. So I feel my life has now been fully lived. So my name is Jerold Kayden. I'm delighted to address you for the next 4 minutes and 50 seconds with my colleague Billie Tsien after that, and finally an introduction of a new website that deals with privately owned public space. This very intriguing phrase that I think captures both possibilities and contradictions. How can something be privately owned and yet be open and accessible and usable by the public as a requirement of law? Well, the reality is New York City has 525 of these so-called privately owned public spaces, plazas, arcades, and other outdoor and indoor spaces located at the bases of 330 or so office and residential skyscrapers. This was a deal between the City of New York and developers of these buildings. The New York City zoning resolution granted over 20 million square feet of bonus zoning floor area and other zoning concessions to the developers if they would agree to provide these plazas and arcades and other spaces. So it was a deal. And it started in 1961, so we have a 50-year record now of these 525 spaces. And quite fairly, it's possible to say that the record is mixed. Some of the spaces are quite good, and in fact, we will hear about one of those terrific spaces from one of its designers. Some of the spaces are quite bad, and we won't hear today from one of the designers of those spaces or owners. Now, there are many reasons why these spaces have a mixed record, and in particular why some of the spaces do not reach the aspirations that we might have for this kind of public realm program. There were problematic laws, although they've been improved, problematic designs, although they've been improved, and problematic ownership, which has been improved but still can be an issue. The improvements over the years can be tracked back to the 1970s, 15 years after this whole program, zoning program for privately owned public space was introduced. Holly White, the great William H. White, the social observer, sociologist writ large, made suggestions for improving public spaces after a study that he did, and the laws changed. And the laws continued to change in the 1980s. In 2000, the city and the Municipal Art Society and I did a study and collected for the first time all of the information about all, at that time, 503 privately owned public spaces, and a book was published that I'm delighted to have written in collaboration with the city and the MAS. And through the past 10 years or so, Amanda Burden, as leader of the City Planning Department, has been a great champion for privately owned public space, and again, improving the rules in 2007 and 2009 dealing with these spaces. Occupy Wall Street did us a favor, though, actually, almost a year ago, when they, in fact, put the spotlight back on something called Zuccotti Park, which is also one of these 525 privately owned public spaces. And they reminded us that these spaces were there to be claimed. Occupy Wall Street, in fact, claimed one of these spaces, Zuccotti Park, and everybody wondered, what did that mean? Could Brookfield office properties kick them off? Could the city kick them off? Occupy Wall Street said, no, we're there, and this is our use. Whether it's eating a sandwich or taking a little nap or protesting on behalf of people who are not adequately represented in the minds of Occupy Wall Street or any other sorts of things, this is part of the public realm for the city of New York, or indeed for any city. So the spaces today remain oddly sort of unclaimed, whether it's by their owners on site or city officials or members of the public. And the issue is, can we do more with these 80+ acres of space. That's 10% of Central Park, disaggregated. A decentralized Central Park, can we do more? And we propose, standing here today, to do more with all of you in this room and outside of this room. We are announcing sort of activities and programs for the future through an organization called Advocates for Privately Owned Public Space at the Municipal Art Society. This is an initiative to give these spaces an advocate, if you will, a public interest steward that can make these spaces more enjoyable and egalitarian for all New Yorkers, and as a model not only for New York, but for other cities around the world. I'd like to now introduce a colleague of mine, somebody who did a remarkable thing with Todd Williams, her partner, in contributing to improving the public realm of New York City through the creation of the David Rubenstein Atrium. Billie Tsien.
I feel like I need to stand on my toes. Here we go. Well, we all know where it is. It's downstairs. This was an interesting project because it's so public. We actually went to this climbing wall, which is what used to exist downstairs, and we brought our office there a number of years ago, and we climbed up the wall. But it really started to fall into kind of terrible sort of situation where you would see rats running around, people were sleeping there, and it smelled really bad when you went inside. So when we were given this commission, really it's from Lincoln Center, although it's Lincoln Center in partnership with the city, to take this space and try to transform it into a place that serves both Lincoln Center by being able to sell tickets during the day of the performance for lower prices, but also acts as a place where things like live streaming of performances can happen, and actually free performances happen on Thursday. We were very excited because it's an extremely public space. So it shows that there's 3 ways of getting in, from Broadway, Columbus, and then from 62nd Street. And what we did was we said, let's bring natural light into this space because we wanted to make it feel like a garden that's indoors for the city of New York. And so the roof above has these portholes in the ceiling that allow natural light to come in, and in the evening we can change that light. There's a very large screen where I've seen various films projected. We saw South Pacific. And on either side of that screen, there are tapestries that were created by a friend of ours named Claudia Youngstra, who is a Dutch tapestry artist. She actually has her own flock of sheep, and she dyes the wool from these sheep with natural recipes that she sort of reconstituted from history, and then made these 2 amazing tapestries. And they were there to bring a sense of warmth and also to work acoustically. We also have these very 2 large green walls because we are also literally making a garden, but we also had to make a place for people, so the garden had to go on the wall. But the overall desire that we wanted to fulfill was to make a place that would welcome all people at all times. So we used materials that are very long-lasting. We have this green marble, we have a Portuguese granite, we have a granite on the floor. Everything is made to last a long time and have a sense of dignity, so that people come and they can be coming for a glass of champagne before the opera, or they can be homeless, but everybody is welcomed at the same level. So this is one of those free Thursday nights where Todd and I once went to a performance of a Brazilian band, and what happened was everybody got up and started dancing, and before you know it, there was a huge conga line that was going in and out of the atrium. So as I said, it welcomes people. It also is a venue for these Fashion Week. So this was a show that happened there last year. And then finally, it's a place where a number of different installations can happen. So one of the more recent installations was this wonderful piece by Christian Marclay called The Clock. And so you could go in, you could sit there. We went in there thinking we would be there for 15 minutes, and we came out 2 hours later. And since this is the last image, I'm going to say I'm even finishing before my time. I have slightly less than 5 minutes, and thank you very much.
Billie doesn't realize just how valuable she just was in making sure we stay on time. So now I'd like to call up Alexis Taylor, who is the project manager, come on up, Alexis, for Advocates for Privately Owned Public Space at the Municipal Art Society, full-time, one sole dedicated person to this for the project, but only part of this enormous team effort that's going to occur, which involves me, although I'm just a professor in Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's not terribly useful, although I am a Yankees fan, by the way, always have been. But beyond that, this effort, based at the Municipal Art Society, is going to engage with all of you. Yes, we have all sorts of wonderful ideas of programs and publicity and sponsoring design competitions and monitoring all of the spaces and guaranteeing that they meet the applicable legal requirements. But at the end of the day, without engaging with all of you in this room and with all of you out there in the city of New York, and indeed outside of New York City in general, because everybody is interested in public space, because it activates the city. It makes it a livable place, an egalitarian place, a meaningful place. That's what cities are all about, and these odd spaces, POPs, privately owned public spaces, can perform that function. But without the public participation, with ideas, suggestions, looking at them, uploading photographs, comments, well, enough already. We're going to announce today that we are going live with a website, apops.mas.org. So let's see what it looks like. I'm curious myself. No, I've been working on it. Alexis has for many, many months. It's beta. It's starting out, but it's released, and we are going to invite all of you to participate here with our website, which is your website. We say our space is your space. So we're going to it, and there we are, apops.mas.org. It's got maps, definitions of what this is, our welcome page, very, very, very much beta. What that means, by the way, when one says beta, is there are mistakes in it. It needs to be made up to date. And don't tell us they're mistakes, because we already know that. All right? So let's continue. That cursor is being moved. This is a video, by the way. We weren't able to actually get it live, but there's a featured space. We're going to have a daily featured space. This happens to be 590 Madison Avenue, formerly known as the IBM space. So we click on the map. We could click on the David Rubenstein atrium, Billie, if we wanted to, but we're clicking on, well, there's 590 Madison. Oh, there's another space there. And one can go to information on every single privately owned public space, all 525 of them in the city. Again, there's, by the way, we're at Columbus Circle around there. Billie, you're just a little higher up. We don't show on the map. So since I don't control this, it's a video, I'm just stuck with all of you just following it. So maps and list of all 525 privately owned public spaces. And if we want to do a search, we just searched for spaces that have restrooms. Those are all the spaces that have restrooms in the city of New York. Probably the most valuable search one can imagine. But you could search for seating and climate control and food and artwork and all sorts of other things, and you could search for all of them, and the spaces show up. So let's look for 590 Madison Avenue. We could click on a marker on the map, we could click on the list, or we could put it in there, 590 Madison Avenue, the old IBM space. And actually, there are a number of spaces that mention it because we have a lot of information, but there we are. And we've got a photograph of it. We allow all of you to rate the space, 1 star through 5 stars. We've got a description. It's an old description, unfortunately, from a book that I wrote with the city and the MAS years ago. We've got a site plan that shows the space and what's in it. And we allow everybody to post comments or to make an announcement or to report a problem at the space. Here's the site plan. So we finally really have information online. I mean, this has been available before, but now it's online on all of these privately owned public spaces in the city. And again, it allows all of you and everybody else to, to interact. This is not new technology. We're all used to this kind of thing, but we've done it for privately owned public space. This 80+ acres, this random archipelago of these spaces scattered around mostly Manhattan, few in Brooklyn and Queens, none in Staten Island and the Bronx, I'm sorry to say, and that's because of the mechanism that actually created them. Commenting as we talk. This is what I allegedly said that Alexis put in last night. I love this space.
You do?
I do. I do. So I think it happens to be a very good space. That's in that cluster with Trump and Sony below. But it's sort of like a living room for New York, and it's free. You can just go there and sit as long as you want. No air conditioning, by the way, but that's okay. It's got some artwork. It's got that cafe there, and it's quite interesting. So this is about us. We describe the whole organization. These are things that one can post, comments, news items, a word about using the space. We've posted for the first time comments because this is now live, And you can walk out of this room, by the way, and we thank a lot of people there. I see Edith Tsien here, from city planning. Melissa, where are you? There's, Melissa is the public space Ceruzi for the City of New York now, Department of City Planning. I don't know who else is up here, and Thank that is also in the room. But it's been a major effort with enormous numbers of people, and we have 45 seconds left, for me to talk about this. And I just want to say, they just took 45 seconds away. So I want to say to everybody, and Vin and Jeannie with MAS, thank you all very, very much. And join us, apops.mas.org, on your iPhone, on iPad, on all mobile platforms. Thank you very much.